Trust company. For those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Haley Gant. I am one of our certified IRA specialists here at Quest, and I work very closely with the rest of our marketing team to help to put on all of these events and educational presentations for you guys. Today, I am really excited to have with us Nathan Long, the president of Quest Trust Company, to talk about how you can be passive and profitable with your IRA while investing into commercial real estate. So before we get started with today's main presentation, I do have just a couple of quick slides for you guys, kind of as we let people get signed on here. I'm going to kind of let you guys know a little bit about what we have going on, upcoming events, and how you can reach out to us here at Quest if you ever have any questions here after the webinar ends. So just kind of quick tidbit about Quest. If you guys have watched our webinars before, you've definitely seen these slides, but we know that we do get a lot of new people that are joining us every single week. So if it is your first time joining us, first of all, welcome. This is just one of many classes and events that we host here at Quest, and we're always here to help you learn about different real estate investment topics, how to invest with your IRA. But at the core of our business, Quest Trust Company, we are a self-directed IRA custodian. So we basically act as the custodian over our clients' IRAs, and our clients actually self-direct their IRAs into real estate, notes, and other sorts of privately held assets. So we're a pretty good sized company. We have about 20,000 clients nationwide. Physically, our offices are in Texas. Our corporate office here in Houston is where I am based out of, but we do have offices in both Dallas and Austin as well. Now, even though physically we are in Texas, we do have clients all across the US. We do operate in all 50 states, and our clients hold investments in their IRAs pretty much in all 50 states and a little bit even beyond that as well. We have about $2 billion in assets under management. The reason why I always like to touch on that is because all of that $2 billion in assets under our management is all privately held assets that our clients have actually self-directed their IRAs into various real estate investments, private lending deals, multifamily deals, or commercial investments, which we are going to talk about today. And I know to a lot of people, a lot of times this can really be a new concept to you. You know, how do I even begin self-directing my IRA into these different types of assets? So that's exactly why we teach these classes every single week, every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. We host some virtual happy hours as well, which you'll see here in a minute. But we are really passionate about educating our clients and investors from all across the US, not only how they can self-direct their IRA, but really how to set yourself up for success in these investments as well. But that being said, I do have a quick disclaimer for you guys. You'll probably actually see this twice in the beginning of today's presentation, but please be aware that at Quest, we do not give tax, legal, or investment advice. Our role is to act as the custodian over your IRA, administrate the account, where you as the client actually get to make all of your own investment decisions. You get to choose how these deals are structured for your IRA. And it's a really awesome thing that you can do, but please be aware that it does come with some added extra responsibility. Please make sure that you are not rushing into investments with people that you do not know. Make sure that you're taking the time to vet your deals, vet the people that you work with, and take the time to make sure that you are working with the right professionals to make sure that your deals are structured properly. Really cannot stress that enough. But now that that disclaimer is out of the way, let's move on to some of the fun stuff, some of the different events that we have coming up here at Quest. So as I've already mentioned, we host a lot of education. You know, there's a lot of IRA companies out there that do what we do. There's a lot of companies out there that, you know, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, E-Trade, all of those companies, they have, you know, most of those clients have no idea that you can invest into privately held assets with your IRA. So, you know, a self-directed IRA custodian is kind of a very niche market. And once you break that down even further, at Quest, we really do provide some of the nation's best education when it comes to learning how to self-direct these accounts and learning how to be successful in these investments as well. Some of these different resources that we have for you include our YouTube channel, our weekly classes. We have a really great education center on our website. And as you can see here in the chat, I do actually have one of our other IRA specialists. Her name is Sarah. She's actually based out of our Dallas office. For now, she'll be moving to Austin soon, but she is dropping some links to these different resources that we have here in the Zoom chat right now. I would definitely encourage you guys, go check those out and go check out our YouTube channel. On YouTube, we have several pre-recorded classes. Today's class, as well as all of the other presentations that we host, are archived and recorded on our YouTube channel. So we have a lot of great resources there. We've got some shorter videos as well that give you the content in a bit more of a condensed version. But do us a favor, go to our YouTube channel, go subscribe to us. We've got a lot of great videos that we're posting on there. And it's been a really fun project to watch this channel grow over the past year and really tailor our content to the education that's relevant right now in today's crazy changing world. Now, one other event that I do want to touch on just on this screen here is the virtual networking happy hours. These are virtual events that we host through Zoom twice a month. On every happy hour, we get about 50 investors that join us from across the US. And the happy hours are really interactive. They're actually set up as a meeting, so everyone gets a chance to share their cameras, introduce themselves to each other. We all have a drink together because it's a happy hour. And it's a lot of fun. We've been doing these for over 6 months now. We will likely keep them going even once our in-person events return here in a couple of months. But be sure to check those out. If you're looking to build your network, if you're looking to learn from other experienced people in this space, our happy hours are a great way to do that and really kind of put some names to the faces. And it's really great to see all of you there twice a month. Now, be sure to mark your calendars. Our next big event that we have coming up will actually be in July. And this is our July Summer Intensive. This will actually be a 3-day event, 3 Fridays in a row. It's half days, so it'll be about from like 8:30 to 12 in the morning, somewhere around there. And on each day, we are going to do a deep dive into the different types of investments that you can actually hold in your self-directed IRA. So the first Friday, July 11th, will be all over real estate, holding direct real estate in your IRA. The next Friday will be over private placements, multifamily, and commercial deals. And the last day will be over notes and private lending. So since this is a bit of a larger scale event that we're putting on, it does have a small ticket price. It's $25 to attend. You can attend all 3 days. You get the recordings. And I am really excited for this event. We are currently putting our lineup of speakers together, and don't miss it. It's definitely going to be a good one. This is not your basics introductory event. This will be a bit more higher level. We're going to cover case studies, due diligence, and some of those deeper topics that, sometimes we might not have time to fully get into in a 1 hour, kind of one-off class. We also have a referral program. So I know a lot of people that watch our classes and events, you guys are currently our clients. But if you have friends or family or colleagues out there that could benefit from having a self-directed IRA, make sure to tell them to put your name on their application when they open up their account, and you will each get a $25 credit. There is no limit to the number of people that you can refer to Quest. It's our way to kind of give back to you guys. And if you have questions about how this exactly works, be sure to visit our webpage that we have set up. That is refer.questtrust.com. And you can find more information there, or just ask one of our IRA specialists and we can walk you through exactly how to get those referral credits. Now, coming up in June, you guys are going to see us putting out a lot of content out there about our client portal. We have recently revamped this within the past year. It is a great resource if you are a Quest client. Through the client portal, you can do a lot of things. You can directly upload your investments for processing. You can change your account information. You can initiate payments that need to go out. And we are really, taking an effort to put a lot of education out there coming up in June about the client portal. So if you guys are currently a Quest client, be sure to keep an eye out for that. And if you are not currently using our client portal, make sure to log in, take advantage of it, look into all the different features that we have through there, because it's a really great way to go paperless, see everything online, and keep all of your investment information secure when it's dealing through the client portal versus maybe emailing in those investment forms like we are all so used to doing. So that's all I have for my quick announcements. Here's our contact information. If you guys have questions, let us know. We are always happy to help. And if you're interested in setting up a free consultation, whether you are currently a Quest client looking to get started, even if you're brand new to real estate and just kind of looking for some resources, we are always here to help. It is very easy to get a hold of us. And you can even chat live with an IRA specialist directly through our website. That chat is not a robot. It's actually us on there. So if you ever have quick questions that need to be answered, be sure to visit our website, and we have a ton of resources for you guys there. Now, without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and bring back Nathan Long, the president of Quest Trust Company. Nathan's here today to talk about some things to do with commercial real estate investing. If you guys have questions, we will actually be answering them live throughout the presentation to make it as interactive as we possibly can. But Nathan, go ahead and take it away. If you don't have any questions, let us know.
Thanks a lot for doing the announcements. I really appreciate that. I always stumble through all those. You're just graceful as can be through them.
Thank you.
So, thank you. I guess we'll hear a little bit from you at the end too, or something. So, guys, we don't have a lot of us on here, which makes it good. Commercial real estate's not something that's a topic for just everybody. And so one of the things that we can do is, if you have questions or something pops in your head, ask them right away. Like, don't wait or whatever. Just ask them on the chat. You'll be muted. Sarah will pause the conversation and just ask them live for you, so we could do that. Or if it's a quick, easy question, she'll answer it on chat. But don't be afraid to just go ahead and just ask whatever questions you want live. Today, what we're talking about is commercial real estate. And in commercial real estate, there's really two types of players most of the time, right? There are those that are using other people's money and what we call the lead in the deal, right? The guy that's putting together the deal and extending his credit and all of those type of things. What I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to give a little quick basic information in the beginning. I'm going to speed through that, but I really want to focus in on what I see as people in either one of those positions running into common problems that I would see through my IRA filter, as you put it, for the deals I've seen, to help you expedite deals or do things or be able to avoid problems that you may be able to have. Commercial real estate is a complicated thing. If you're thinking about investing your IRA either passively or raising money for a commercial project, I highly recommend picking up the phone, taking some time to talk to an IRA specialist to understand very clearly, because each deal is different, right? And if you understand how to make deals flow, how to make it work, whether you're raising money or using your own money, you're going to feel much more comfortable with having just a little interview with an IRA specialist. Remember, it's always free to talk to an IRA specialist if you have a question. Even if you don't have an account, even if you have an account with another custodian and you're not getting your questions answered and you just need some education, please feel free to call us. No pressure, no nothing. We want everybody to be making the right decisions. Educated investors are always the best investors. And those are we'll get you eventually. There's no high pressure sales here at all. I'll guarantee you that. I think Sherry went over it. Quest doesn't provide tax, legal, or investment advice. We don't endorse any products. We don't sell anything. All right. Make sure, it's a few $100s for most people. Make sure you're taking the time to do your own due diligence and understand each investment that you get involved in. All right. A self-directed IRA really isn't a type of IRA at all. This is a part I'm going really fast through, by the way, you guys, right? Because I think you've all heard this at least once. All right. It's not a type of IRA at all. It's just, we hold private assets and other companies hold publicly traded assets. There's nothing titled a self-directed IRA. That's just a term to try to describe what we do. Most of my clients keep an account someplace else as well as an account with us and transfer the money back and forth, do the odd things with Quest and do normal things with Charles Schwab or Fidelity or whoever. A lot of benefits to having a self-directed account. One of the biggest has really shown itself over the last year was diversification, the ability to invest in other types of assets outside of publicly traded ones, right? But we teach a lot about tax savings. I honestly think that if you want to build wealth, you've got to spend some of your education constantly updating yourself on tax savings. Quest will help with that with the retirement portions, but it goes out on beyond that. But I love the fact that most self-directed IRAs have some type of social benefit to them as well. If I invest in an apartment complex that's in my neighborhood, typically they're taking a blight or an apartment complex that might be run down a little bit. They're fixing it up, providing local jobs, providing local work. Well, of course, I'm getting above average return. So I like a lot of self-directed IRA investment from a social standpoint, just because often you're investing in the community where you live, work, and play. But for sure, the biggest benefit is having the benefit of investing in things that you know and understand. There are all different types of IRAs that can be self-directed. I think it's really, really important to take a little bit of time with an IRA specialist if you're raising money to have them talk to your person about the different ways they can invest, right? Because there's traditional Roth IRAs, they may want to do a tax conversion prior to doing the investment. We might be able to use some of their employer plans or even bring in their children's Coverdell education accounts and health savings accounts. And here's one of the best things I love to do whenever I'm talking about these type of investments, right? Typically, we're going to have a sophisticated or qualified investor, right? So he had to meet those requirements in order to be able to invest into that. But he's allowed to invest those IRAs. What's nice about that is if you bring in an IRA specialist to talk at that time, we'll talk about all the different types of accounts that he has to invest, right? So we may be able to take things like the children's Coverdell accounts that would never have the opportunity to invest in something like this and piggyback it on top of an investment that you're making with your traditional IRA from your old 401k. You might be able to piggyback small Roth IRAs. You might be able to piggyback health savings accounts. Amazing. Invest into an apartment complex with your health savings account, something I have done before, because you can take these smaller amounts. Now, this has benefits to both parties, the parties raising money and party using the money. Let me explain to you. If you're raising money, all right, and you bring in an IRA specialist and they bring in and introduce all these different accounts that we can now use, what happens then? Well, you're actually talking about your investment to typically the whole family. And it becomes more of a wealth building strategy to you. And all you're doing is bringing in a professional, just like you have professional attorneys to deal with the other things. You're bringing in a professional to talk to them about things and elevate your client. Here's the other thing. You're going to have access to more money because we're going to open up more accounts. And some of those people are going to grow up, the kids and the people, and they're going to become your future investors. If it's your money that you're putting into a deal, you now have the opportunity to do some wonderful things. One of the most important things that you can do is you can take these small amounts and allow them to participate in types of investments that you couldn't do by partnering. And this is a great opportunity to take children's Roth IRAs and Coverdell education accounts and things like that. And it teaches them about investing through showing them. If any of you guys run across my son, Derek, this is one of the ways that we do in our family. And if you look at his age, he's a sophisticated investor doing his own investments, doing really well. He's a certified IRA specialist, somewhere in his young 30s. My point being is he didn't get there on his own. He had to start with some showing how to do some investments. And for the deal sponsor, it's no big deal. Why? Because I'm only doing 1K1 to who? Quest Trust Company for the benefit of John Smith, but it all relates back to that one tax ID number. So there's not extra reporting because there's 10 accounts on there or anything else. I've not had any securities attorneys that I know of in the deals. I don't see every single one that goes through or whatever, so they're good, but that's never really been a problem when they've seen these partnering together on the deal, because again, it's 1K1, one issue, everything else is the same. Learning how to partner and bring in an IRA specialist early into your deal adds a lot of character to what you're doing as raising money, right? At Quest, we try to break up the type of investment people are doing with different departments. Sometimes people are taking real estate, taking their IRA and buying direct purchase of real estate. Sometimes they're loaning money, and those are different departments to us than entities because it's a little bit different, understanding a subscription agreement and how to do that. So Quest, if you are purchasing an investment like an apartment complex, very seldom you're directly purchasing it through your IRA. You could be, your IRA could be a lender into the deal. That's commonly seen. But most of the time, it's a limited liability company where you're putting in sometimes a limited partnership or joint venture or a trust on a smaller deal. And we have a department that deals specifically with that. So you have experts to know how to expedite your deals as they go through. Okay, that was kind of the beginning. I want to talk about problems that we have that are commonly dealt with, and then solutions. What I like to do is identify a problem and then talk about the solutions to it, because there might often be multiple solutions to different problems. Again, I always encourage you. My IRA specialists are highly trained. Okay, they're certified IRA specialists. It takes me a long time to educate them and know everything. They're really great to bring into your deal to add that extra. So problem one is disqualified people. As you know, probably from a lot of my different speeches, there are people who are disqualified from benefiting to the IRA. They can't buy, sell, trade, extend services, or receive a benefit. Who are those people? That's the IRA owner and their family, specifically their spouse, lineal ascendants and descendants, their spouse. And here's the kicker: companies those people own, control, manage, or highly compensated by. Listen to me. If you're raising money, you need to understand whose money can go into your deal and whose money can't. All right. So you need to have a simplified answer of what disqualified people are. Disqualified people are the IRA owner, their spouse, their lineal ascendants, that would be the parents and children, right? Their spouses, and companies those people own, control, manage, or highly compensated by. Those are the disqualified people. And what they can't do is buy, sell, trade, or extend services to or from. If you're raising money, if it's your deal, you are putting your credit on the line. That is extending a service. All right. If it's your deal, you're finding the deal. You're also hoping to make a bunch of money and put it in your pocket. You cannot use your own IRA. You cannot use your spouses, your parents, your children, or their spouses. I didn't say brothers, sisters, anyone else. It's a specific list. You, spouse, parents and children, their spouses, and of course, companies those people own, control, manage, or highly compensated by. So if you're forming an LLC, you're going to be controlling it. You cannot use those members' IRAs into your deals, and that's really important to understand that. Solution: I have none. This is the number one thing you have to understand, number one thing that you have to know when you're raising money. And also, if you're going to put your money into a deal, it can't be on your son's deal, on your parents' deal. Could it be on your brother's deal? Possibly. Anyway, if you ever have questions that I'm going to come back to this a lot in the speech, call, pick up, and talk to an IRA specialist, right? I like to talk about this. This is not for the people that are raising money. This is the other side of the fence. If you're investing your money into a commercial deal or an LLC, I think that you have to come with a little bit of a warning. There is fraud. There are people who prey on self-directed IRAs, and they're hard to spot sometimes. They're definitely hard to spot. But one of the biggest things that you see, or one of the areas that you see them, is whenever we're taking IRAs and investing in an entity, right? You got to take the time to do some due diligence. And what is due diligence? First of all, make sure you do some background checks on the person that you may be investing with. Right? If they're legitimate, they're going to actually want to provide you background information with them. You should also understand the investment. If the investment goes out of your scope of understanding, you shouldn't do it. Honestly, most of the time I see fraud, it's just not a common deal. It's a deal that's in a foreign country or something like that. There's a rush for the money, and we're going to get super rich if we do this, all of those seem to be the things, right? You should be able to understand the investment. And if you can't, you shouldn't do it. If it's beyond your limits or knowledge of how things work, don't do it. And talk to the investor about the timeline. Often even legitimate investments go considerably longer than you may have been anticipating. So talk to them. This is what you intend for me to get my money back, but how long could it go? What could happen? Other types of things. And ask the investor, and what do we do if it goes wrong? If it doesn't go according to your plan, what are your alternative plans? People who are committing fraud don't like these type of questions. People who are legitimately raising money do like these type of questions. Why? It means you have a legitimate investor and they're happy to provide those things. Just something that we have whole classes just on how to do due diligence, but this is just an area. Make sure that if you're doing it, take your time to do your own due diligence. I can't say that enough. Okay. Switching hats. I'm going to talk. This one is mostly for the people who are raising money. What are we talking about? Plan asset regulations. Huh? So there are rules, of course, with raising money, and those rules do apply to when we're using retirement accounts. And one of the problems is if you get too many retirement accounts inside of a particular investment, it can change your role as not just the person providing an investment, but actually as a fiduciary to the IRAs, and all of a sudden they become disqualified. If you're going to use IRAs, and almost everybody buying commercial property these days do, because there's so much good money out there for being raised. And I know a lot of people that use money outside their IRA and use money from their IRA, both in one transaction or whatever. You want to make sure that the securities attorney you're talking to is familiar with IRAs and plan asset regulations. Just ask them. We're going to be raising money from IRAs as part of our profit. Are you familiar with the plan asset regulations and what they have to do? 90% are going to be like, yep, know right what to do. Typically, this is kind of the structure that you'll see, is they like to try to keep the IRAs to about 25%. You keep it low enough, it seems to skirt around the problems of the rules, and that's typically what you see. I've seen it other ways. The building that I rent Houston from, it's now owned by someone else, but it used to be owned by a conglomerate. It was almost 67% IRAs. But then they did, because they had such a high amount of IRAs, they had extra accounting and actuaries and some other steps that had to be taken in order to make it happen. So it's really not really a problem. Just make sure that you're dealing with someone that understands it, so that they can guide you properly through how to get through it. Right. Again, solution, just hire a good question and ask those two questions. Tell them, I'm using IRAs. Are you familiar with plan asset regulations? So you'll sound really smart, and they'll give you a bunch of information. Here's the worst thing I want to talk about all day long. And I think this is something that some people raising money try to act like it doesn't happen. And it's silly, because when I get to the solutions, you can see there's all different types of solutions to this problem. But there's a serious problem in commercial real estate. And the problem comes to is certain investments IRAs make can be taxable, right? And let me try to explain this. If your IRA does something like own a business, I'm selling ice cream cones, and I had a Roth IRA that owned that business. The Roth IRA doesn't have to pay any income tax. Everybody else does. Couldn't I sell my ice cream cones cheaper? Well, yes. So that's an unfair business advantage. Is it improper for you to own an ice cream cone business by a Roth IRA? No, it's not improper. It's not illegal, but we will tax that profit under a set of rules called unrelated business income tax. And this tax can be quite onerous, right? If it's a short-term tax, it kind of hits the tax rate really high, really fast. Somewhere around $12,000, I think you're at like the top income tax rate, and it's taxed as ordinary income. If I'm a passive investor and I'm putting my money into an apartment complex deal, for example, am I investing in a business? The answer is no. I'm investing in real estate, and am not subject to unrelated business income tax rules. Just a side note that if you did rent personal properties, let's say like mobile homes that are not attached to real estate, that is deemed running a business and could be taxable. I know a lot of people that do it. Again, not illegal, taxable to the IRA, not to the person. Why would they do it? Because it's very profitable. Well, why are we talking about this if owning a business isn't matched buying a commercial property? Because there's another side to it. All right. And this is what we call debt, UDFI, or unrelated debt financed income. And let me see if I can explain it to you in a simplified story about real estate, and then we'll apply that to commercials. So say I want to go buy a house in my IRA. And so what I do is I don't have, the house costs $100,000. I don't have $100,000. I have $40,000 in my IRA. So I put $40,000 down. I go to a specialized lender like North American Savings Bank and get a non-recourse loan and borrow $60,000. So when I bought the house, I was 60% debt leverage. The next day I sold the house. I sold the house for $200,000. Woo, I'm a good investor. All right. So I made $100,000 in profit. If I made $100,000 in profit in that deal, because I was 60% debt leverage, $60,000 or 60% is subject to unrelated business income tax. If I had done the deal, all right, and held it for over a year, I could get the capital gains rate. But in my little story, I sold the property in one day. So that's taxed as ordinary income at a very high rate, right? Because after $12,000, you're going to be paying top income bracket. So you're going to pay a lot of tax. And I ask people all the time, if I'm teaching this class live, I'd be like, would you do this? And a whole bunch of people are like, no. I'm like, listen to the story, man. I started with $40,000 in my Roth IRA. I doubled it because I got my $40,000 back plus another $40,000 in one day. And I split $60,000 with Uncle Sam. Sign me up. I would do it every day of the week. The problem is the story's not real. Okay. But it helps us to demonstrate the problem of unrelated business income tax. All right. And where it gets us in trouble is pass-through entities, like typically the type of entities that we would set up whenever we're using IRAs or buying, not using IRAs, when we're buying commercial property like apartment complexes, is going to be an LLC. That's what we call a pass-through entity. In other words, for the purposes of taxation, if you go sue it, you're going to sue the LLC. But for the purposes of taxation, it's going to pass through the entity, right, to the beneficial owner. So if the entity, the LLC, is buying property and buying it with a loan, which that almost always is, to the extent that it is debt leverage, both the capital gains and rental type income that comes in off of that property are subject to unrelated business income tax, right? Who pays the tax? Again, not you, but your IRA has to pay the tax. Go ahead, Sarah.
We actually have a really good question from the audience that has to relate with UBIT, since you're talking about it right now. Could you comment on ways to avoid and lessen its impact? Because my inexperience makes me think that UBIT tax is higher than normal capital gains. So what's the benefit of using the IRA money?
That's literally about what I'm about ready to get into right now. Okay, so what I want to do is I'll see if I can answer the question with the next couple of slides. And then if I haven't, I'll circle back around and hit us back up. Okay.
Love it. Thank you.
All right. Because right now I'm just describing the problem, and it's a nasty one. You're like, yeah, capital gains and unrelated business income tax can crush you. How do I get around it? Well, I have several solutions. Okay. Again, capital gains rate may be changing here right now and the marginal tax rate, but it does go all the way up to these rates right now, right? So some people ask that question, that very question. Well, why would I ever do it in my IRA if I have to pay tax on it anyway? Well, one of the big reasons to understand is you have to do something with your investment in your IRA. And sometimes even after paying tax, that is a greater return. And the other point of it is it's in your IRA now. Maybe the next investment you do may not be taxable, but now I have more to work with for it to be paid tax, right? But let's get to the real point. How do I make this stuff just go away, or how do I reduce the pain of having to pay unrelated business income tax? All right. Again, I have several solutions. Solution one, depreciation, right? Now I'm going to talk about investing in a taxable entity, talk about using a loan and a special exemption inside of a 401k. So depreciation. Let's talk about this for a second. What is depreciation? Well, depreciation is whenever I buy my investment rental property, as it goes down in value, I can take depreciation off for repairs, but it reduces my basis in that house as I go along. And so when I sell it, sometimes I'd have to recapture that money. And sometimes we use what's called a 1031 exchange to put it into another deal. Most people are familiar with this as I'm talking about it. Why are we talking about depreciation? I heard from my tax guy that I can't use depreciation on my rental properties in my IRA. And he told me that it was a bad idea to have rental properties in my IRA because of the loss of depreciation. I'm like, that's interesting. Always get interested in that, because usually the problem isn't whether I'm making a decision whether to buy something in my IRA or buy something out of my IRA. I got this big old bucket of money in my retirement account for my old 401k, and I have to invest it. If I invest it in real estate, I'm going to get a higher return and I'll have a bigger bucket of money. If I invest it in something like stock markets that I don't know very much about, I'll have a lower return. I'll have a little bucket of money. Mr. Smart Guy, in a bigger bucket of money, even if we don't get the use of depreciation better, right? Sometimes I can't see the forest through the trees. But the reason you don't get depreciation inside an IRA is because there's no tax. You can't get a tax deduction unless you're paying tax. Guess what? As soon as unrelated business income tax rules kick in, we can now use depreciation just like you could outside the IRA. There's nothing that prevents it, but something totally different happens inside of an IRA. Let's go back and try to understand and we're talking about our story, right? I bought the house and I was 60% debt leverage, but instead of selling the house, it's just sometimes easier to describe it in a single piece of real estate, but the same thing happens whenever I'm buying an apartment complex. I'm buying a property, I'm borrowing so much money, and I'm so much debt leverage. In that case, I was 60% debt leverage. But instead of selling it one day, what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep it for a long time, and I'm going to pay down that house over a period of time. And as I get money in from rents, I'm going to use that to pay down the property, and I'm going to take depreciation on the repairs and stuff as I go and take as much depreciation as I can. Why? Because what does depreciation do? It doesn't typically make a tax go away. It pushes it off to the future. So if you push your taxation off to the future, outside an IRA, you recapture it later. But inside the IRA, we're only being taxed to our debt leverage percentage. We started at 60%, but what happens if we paid it all off? What happens if we're able to use depreciation to push the taxation off to the future until we get to what's called an average indebtedness of zero? In other words, we've had the property paid off for 1 year. And then we sell it. How much tax will we have to pay? Ding, ding, ding. Zero. That's correct. In certain real estate transaction deals, the whole UBIT problem isn't anything besides a paperwork problem, finding proper accountants to be able to track your depreciation, fill out a 990T so that when you do sell a property, that have things. One solution and one solution only. The problem with it is whenever we purchase stuff like commercial property, we're not always doing this. We're not trying to pay it off, right? If it's a small commercial deal, that might be the strategy. I'm going to get a loan and try to pay it off. But what happens if you have a different strategy? What happens if your strategy is, I'm going to buy this apartment complex, it's kind of all jacked up, I'm going to fix it up, make it pretty, get some better tenants in there, raise the rents, therefore I'll raise the appraised value. Then what am I going to do? I'm going to take some money off the table by borrowing a little bit more, changing out that first loan. This is so, and also commercial property has long-term type of loans, right? Longer financing. It's often not going to pay down. So what are some of the other solutions? Okay. I can't tell you in this taxing thing whether this one works, but it works from a procedural standpoint. I'll tell you that much. If you're raising money, one of the things that you might consider doing is using a C corporation just for the IRAs. Let me explain. Typically, you set up an LLC, okay, and that LLC is a pass-through entity, and that's the proper entity for purchasing real estate because most of your investors are individuals and not retirement accounts. If we had a corporation in there, we would pay tax at the corporate level, and then individuals would have to pay tax again, or the dreaded double taxation. But if IRAs were all the investors were, then what would happen is the corporation would fill out a corporate tax return and all the dividends to the IRAs happen tax-free. Depending on how much tax we're talking about, this doesn't make the tax go away. But what it does do is simplify a couple of things. First of all, you might be able to pay considerably less tax at a corporate rate than you would under capital gains or unrelated business income tax rate short term. But also what I've noticed this is people do this. They take the LLC that's going to purchase the real estate, and then they have a small C Corp on the side. The C Corp is what the IRAs invest in. Then the C Corp itself invest in the LLC. Well, why? Because now the LLC will remit its profit to the C Corp. Then the C Corp can pay its taxes, and all the IRAs that are in the deal will get their money come out tax-free. And they don't have to fill out the complicated tax return of a 990T that the IRA has to do. So you, as the plan sponsor, kind of take that responsibility away from them by using this structure. I've seen it happen. I've seen it work well in the past. One solution to the problem is maybe set it up so that your IRAs are invested in a C corporation and go on. I have more solutions to the problems. Another solution I've seen, this works in smaller deals. And again, each solution has its own set of problems too, right? So this solution here, loan. Sometimes you can take the IRAs if on your setup, instead of having them be participants, just have them be one of the lenders in the deal. By the IRAs switching who they are, this avoids the unrelated and business income tax. And this has worked in some deals, typically smaller deals. What I see with the larger deals is the bank doesn't want other lenders in there. They don't want you borrowing the money that is the seed money to come down. They want it to be directly in there. But I've seen other structures where this has actually worked. So sometimes rather than making your IRA a limited partner or part of an LLC, simply set it up so that you're loaning instead of owning. I have one final solution, and this is going to solve the problem for a good portion of people, including those that may have already invested in commercial real estate with their IRAs and now realize that they're going to have to pay this tax. You might be able to avoid it with this strategy, a solo 401k. You see, there's a special type of account called an individual or a solo 401k that has its own exemption, and it's specific to exactly what we're talking about. If the IRA owns real estate and that real estate, or the 401k owns real estate and that real estate is debt leveraged, and we're holding it over a year, it's a complete exemption. The tax just goes away. Wait a second, Nathan. Why didn't you tell me about this one the first time? Why'd you talk about those other things? This is like the silver bullet. It's magic. How does it work? Well, the problem with individuals or solo 401ks is they kind of come with their own little set of problems. All right. Problem one, or the biggest one, is you have to legitimize it. In other words, you can't just say, "Oh, I want a solo 401k." What a legitimizing process is first, you have to be able to have self-employment income. And we know that because it's demonstrated on your tax return. And then that first year you have it, you would also have to make a contribution, not a rollover contribution from your traditional IRA or something else, but just a actual contribution for that tax year. That's the legitimizing problem. The other problem is, now a lot of people could do this. Even if you had a W-2 job, you might get some consulting fees or make some money outside. Or I even had one guy that he bought and sold some stuff online so that he could and turn that money in as a little bit of income so he could have a solo 401k. But if you have common law employees, like I'm also an owner of Quest, I'm not only an employee of Quest, I'm one of the owners. Therefore, I'm considered to have common law employees. So even if I had income outside of Quest, a solo 401k wouldn't be appropriate for me. So the two problems is not everybody can have one because they can't legitimize the question, and other people have their own employees in other businesses, and there's grouping rules that don't allow you to provide benefits to yourself that you're not providing to your other employees that would prevent you from having a solo 401k. But for those that can match those, there's one last problem is they're just complicated. They're not like an IRA. There's self-reporting you have to do. There's dangerous responsibility and check of keeping record keeping and things like that. As long as if you're good at those things, this works really well because the advantages to a solo 401k are huge. There's other advantages other than just the exemption on UDFI, but also checkbook control. You get direct access to a checkbook. You can make these very large contributions. You can move money to yourself. But again, the biggest one is to be able to take money, right? Borrow someone else's money and then make it grow completely tax-free inside of a retirement account using leverage and get an exemption against the 401k. Absolutely amazing. Now here's the other part. Say you've already invested in an IRA in an apartment complex and it's about ready to pay out big. Well, you've already had it for more than 1 year. If you did open a solo 401k and transfer that investment into the solo 401k, you would qualify immediately for that exemption on the unrelated business income tax. Those are my different solutions. I will say one last little caveat about 401ks that are difficult. Even though our 401ks have a Roth component to them, and you can even do a Roth conversion inside the 401k, one thing that you can't do right now, though there's some talk about changing this, is you cannot move money, a Roth IRA into a solo 401k. So if your investment is a Roth IRA and that's it, that little trick there didn't work. Sarah, tell me, did that work? Did that answer the questions?
Absolutely. We did have one other question in the chat box. Is there a minimum that you have to contribute to legitimize that solo 401k plan?
That's a great question. And the answer is no. There is no guidance at all as to how much needs to be done. I've seen it done with just a few $100s before. And the other thing is it's clear that you don't have to make that contribution every year. You should make it every few years, but there's also no guidance about how often or how many years in say 10 years that you actually have to make that contribution to continue to keep that 401k legitimate. But it is very clear that very first year you do have to have some form of income and put it in there. I know these are complicated subjects and stuff, so like I always say, talk to your IRA specialist. What else you got for me, Sarah?
Well, it looks like that's all the questions that we have. I'm going to put our contact information in the chat box, and I think Haley's going to close it up with the end remarks.
Okay. Well, one last thing I guess I would say before you did that or whatever. Special thanks, both Sarah, Haley, they're IRA specialists at Quest. They
Looks like Nathan might have frozen. Did he freeze for you, Sarah? All right, well, anyways, I will go ahead and continue what Nathan was saying. Yeah, guys, both Sarah and myself are IRA specialists. We do actually focus a little bit more in on our marketing department, but if you send an email to iraspecialist@questtrust.com, that'll go directly to our entire team, including our IRA specialist in our sales department, that their main role is to build out that one-on-one relationship and connection with you as you are asking questions, learning how all of this works, setting up a free consultation. And then eventually, if you do open up your account, they will be your main point of contact to help you with the paperwork, get it open, get it funded as well. So if you guys have questions, reach out to us. We are always happy to help. And be sure to check out our other events that we have coming up. Looks like we may have lost Nathan, but I hope you guys have a great day. At least we made it through the class. But y'all have a great day. We'll see you in some of our upcoming events. See y'all later. Bye, Sarah.